Let me welcome you to the next in our series of Vision Quest Journeys, Stories from the People's Residence. My name is Don Simpson, and to my left is the woman who's creating this wonderful education, cultural gathering place that brings people together from all backgrounds in the neighborhood and connects them to their own friends in the neighborhood, to the wider city, to the country of Canada, and out to the world. Aita Sadhu, here we are again, telling one of our legacy stories, because the theme of this place is becoming Legacy Lives Here. And we're trying to find ways of helping people of all backgrounds speak of their families or their friends that have come from around the world and built their life in this community. And in building that life, they've gone out and helped to build our nation. Mm-hmm. So tonight we have a very special guest who, like many of us, didn't start here in Toronto. Actually, I want to welcome Emmanuel Jal.
Thank you.
Emmanuel, you started your journey many miles away in a small village in southern Sudan. And some of the people watching will be very familiar with Emmanuel because although he started life in a less than perfect condition, he's gone on to be an international hip-hop artist, an actor, a philanthropist, a life coach, and a business entrepreneur. That's quite a journey, and you haven't yet reached your 40th year, Emmanuel. What have you got to say to that? Is that a fair description of who Emmanuel is now?
Well, it's a journey, so you never know what's going to come next, but you go with what you feel in your heart. As long as you can see it in your head, you just keep moving.
Yeah, listening to you talk at some of your wonderful coaching things, I'm struck by your emphasis on people needing to find a purpose. And if they find a purpose, then it helps them through some tough times. So tonight, what I would love to engage you in, because I've been blessed that I've had a chance for well over a decade to get to know you. Aita, on the other hand, is meeting you tonight for the first time. So I'm suggesting that what we might do is help Aita and myself and our audience get a sense of the stages of that journey that you've been on, that's led you to the kind of diverse leadership role that you're taking on now in that movement for peace which has come out of your life journey to date. Are you happy to start with us on taking us through the journey of Emmanuel's life?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So, as I understand, you were a young boy in southern Sudan, and for some of the viewers who know there was confusion and conflict and war there, they may not know much about the story, but suffice maybe to say that you were living in a country where quite distinct different philosophies and religious groups were bringing people into clashes. And as happens too often, Sudan happened to be a country that had lots of resources, particularly oil, that other people wanted. And so you as a young boy were growing up in conditions of some violence. And perhaps we could start there. What impact did that have on your childhood, the drive by different people to try and gain control of the resources in your area of the country?
Well, for me, I did not know what the whole war was about because I was born in a very difficult time at that time. And how I heard about war is my mother used to tell me that the world is going to end one day. And to me, the world is going to end. I've been trying to imagine how will it end. But the first time I heard the bombs dropping and the ground was shaking, and then you see people running different directions. Then there was so much confusion. Early memories is a bike fell on me on that time, and as the bike fell on me, I was on fire. And so as the houses are burning, people are screaming. I'm crying. People thought probably I'm crying because I'm scared, but I'm crying because a bomb has dropped and the bike has fell on me, and I'm little. I didn't have strength to get out, so my left toe got burned, and that was the first greatest scar of the war. Then after that, I witnessed my aunt ripped in front of me at one point, and then we keep running with my mom and my brothers and sisters from one place to another, where we get to see dead bodies that are fresh and dead, rotten bodies as well.
And somewhere in that period, you got separated from your mother, who eventually was killed. Is that correct?
For me at that time, I didn't understand how my mom died, but I was told the news later. The person who brought us the news, there's like magicians in Africa. I don't know. This kind of people, I don't know how they see things. A soldier just turned up and asking people questions. So he had a ball that he'll put water and there are sticks on it. And so if you come around, you're asking your loved one. If the sticks down and didn't fall off, it's mean your loved one is alive. But if the stick falls off and did not balance in the water, that person you're asking for is dead. And so we came to him, and the stick fell off. Then he told us, your mom is not alive. We couldn't believe him. We didn't want to believe him because we were Christians. So these are witch stuff. We don't believe in this thing. But a few days later, we got the news. And after that, I did not absorb the shock. I was in denial. It took me a while for that incident, for that news to actually capture me.
And you were what, 7 or 8 years
I was
old at that?
7.
Okay.
And then soon after that, my father sent me out and told me I'm going to go to school in Ethiopia. We had to walk hundreds and hundreds of miles. And on this journey, some children died of starvation, some died of dehydration, and some were eaten by wild animals. But arriving in Ethiopia, this is where I got trained, where I became a child soldier.
So I'm trying to piece together both conversations you and I have had over the years, but things I've written, and we should alert the audience to know that there is an autobiography of you as a war child for anyone who wants to have the leisurely time to follow this story. But you were in Ethiopia in some kind of camp that your father hoped would be more protective to you, but the soldiers of the South, the Liberation Army, started recruiting young people like yourself from the edge of these camps. Is that how you became a child soldier?
Well, I probably have to ask my father if he knew. I don't know if he knew when he was sending me there.
Because he was in the Liberation Army.
He was a commander. So there was thousands of kids who were collected. So we're in this city of 30,000 children. Like at night, if we're eating food, you could hear the noise because we eat at the same time. So if you're like probably a mile away, you could actually hear. It's like birds, but these are kids.
There's kids eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a tough journey for each and every young person who came there, because each one of them has a story. And as I could describe it, how terrifying this situation was, is I remember a little boy one time, because of this situation we were burying our own dead. Somebody died, we dig our own graves and we bury our own dead, so, and we make our own prayers. And I remember this kid who started asking questions, and he said, where is my mommy? Where is my dad? Why are we here? God, what have we done to deserve this? So the kid throughout the night was asking questions after questions. We don't have the answers, and I wish there was an adult there who would have just gone and give him a hug. And a simple question he asked was, who made the bag of maize? Who are these white people who are coming to help us? So questions after questions. In the morning, like around 6 or 7 in the morning, when the sun was still fresh, some kids were standing, some were lying down, and we're all looking at that kid who was talking through the night. He was standing and he had a rope on his hand. Then he climbed the tree and he tied the rope on his neck and he tied it on the tree and he jumped. And that, I didn't know how to react. We kind of like in our picture know what he's about to do, but none of us stopped him.
Yeah. So you're very powerfully describing youthful experiences that most of us have no sense of how you experience that. And then the next question on your journey becomes, but somehow you got out of that, and it was one of those aid workers that found a way to help you and some others break away from this life. So can you tell us a little bit about Emma?
Well, Emma was a British aid worker that I met on the most difficult part, which became the most inspiring part of my journey. We planned and escaped, and we were told the journey was going to take us 1 month, but it took us 3 months.
You were heading to some safe community, or?
So the idea was we go back and protect our families. And on the way, there was no water. We drink our own urine. In the morning, we'd wipe our hand on the grass and would lick it several times. This kind of experience was different than being in a battlefield. Because when you're in the battlefield, you kind of like expect, you know what is happening. You know death is there, but it's always temporary. The guns will go, but this one was a dragging long journey.
And how long did it take?
3 months.
3 months.
And here, cannibalism started. When we ran out of food, other soldiers started eating dead bodies. My senses changed. And I look at my fellow human being, and they smell like food to eat. There was a child soldier who was dying. And I told him, I'm going to eat you tomorrow.
Wow.
And he looked at me, and he didn't say anything. But that night we put bombs around another child soldier who had died, and hoping a hyena will come to eat that dead body. The hyena comes, bomb explode, it takes the body, and
And
nothing.
then you get the hyena.
The hyena is not dead. it survived. The bomb exploded and we couldn't eat it. And this, I remember crawling under that tree, hoping if I could find a piece of a dead body that I could eat. But there was just only flies. And in this journey, it's the lowest I've ever been. Because I remember I was starving, and you're lying down, and the flies keep on coming. They go in your mouth, they go in your eyes, and I just open my mouth. When it's full with flies, I eat it. Luckily, it did not give me any stomach problem. I can't understand now. One fly would probably kill me if I eat one now.
So somewhere in there you met Emma and she got you to Nairobi.
Yes, so in this journey, how I survived here after almost eating my friend, or this child soldier, it was the most, it's the part I like sharing, because when it comes in my head, it has different emotion, but it inspires me. I remember under this tree talking to my mom, and I said, "Mom, God, if you're there, give me something to eat. And if I survive this journey, wherever I go, I'll always give you the credit." And that night, I battled with my mind. Part of my mind tell me, eat your friend. Part of my mind tell me, if you're gonna eat your friend, it will haunt you for the rest of your life. And then I waited till morning. When I was about to lose hope, like 11 a.m. to eat my friend, there was another child soldier that I thought died somewhere. He picked his gun. Because I was struggling with my gun, there was a scroll on top of the tree, very close to me. But I was trying to cock my gun to fire at the crow. My muscles are not there. But that child soldier managed to cock his gun and fired at the bird. It fell between my legs. And then he collapsed. He never lived to eat that bird. I ate it. I was the only one who ate that bird from under that tree, from the claws to the intestine to the feathers. And then it gave me energy to walk into the next place. And it left questions to me. How did that young man know that I'm struggling to shoot the bird? And sometimes I look at it, the universe has its own way of making some things make sense. And that's when I arrived in Word and I met Emma McCune, who rescued 150 child soldiers.
Wow, I didn't realize she had rescued that many and
Yes.
helped you get to Nairobi.
Yeah.
Yes, she put under 3 schools, so she would convince the commanders, she would convince the village. They say you have no future if the children are not in school, and she would work with the locals. She ended up marrying one of the commanders there, and which is current vice president of South Sudan. His name is Dr. Riek Machar. He was the former vice president. But Emma identified me from the other children, and I was disarmed, and she told me, if you leave your gun, I'm going to take you to school. So as a kid, I always wanted to go to school. I left my home to go to school, but I have a gun. But the gun is like my father and my mother, so now trading my gun for a pen was also very emotional.
So where did you go to school in Nairobi?
She put me in a school called Sawa Sawa Academy, a boarding school. So she smuggled me to Kenya and then into school. But yeah, that's the turning point where I always say, you will never know potential or any child or any human being unless that person is given an opportunity. So this became the turning point of my life.
So when we talked a long time ago and I asked you what early dreams did you have about your life at that point, if I'm correct, you like most young people, started to dream about all kinds of things you might be. An athlete, a boxer, an engineer, and interestingly enough, it became music that began to shape what has become your successful career. So, can you explain to us a bit of how did you get hooked on music, and how did you take the first steps that led you to become a internationally recognized hip hop artist? That's quite a journey from what you've told us to date. So, how did that start in Nairobi? Did it start in the slum community for joy, or did it start by being inspired by other musicians, or?
As a kid, I always wanted to be a part of a solution because I've seen so much suffering, and I would say, I want to be among the people who are gonna come and help. And then I would imagine how would it be if I'm a doctor? And as a kid, I would imagine being a doctor, and it would just give me a lot of energy. Sometimes I'd imagine being a pilot. So the question I used to have: who made tanks? How did they make cookies? Why is the plane flying in the air? I was told these people went to school, and so, and then school is where you're gonna learn these things. And so I didn't aspire to be a musician. That was not. I became an accidental musician.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because when I was in Nairobi, the things that inspired me the most were speeches. Like Martin Luther King. I was introduced to Martin Luther King. I was introduced to Nelson Mandela. There was no YouTube during that time where you could go live.
Yeah.
But you'd hear people telling their stories. Oh, there is somebody who is this and there's somebody who is that. And you want to ask and they'll tell you the story. I wasn't able to read it from the books, and maybe on the TV if something show. And so I was curious about all these people where you're told about their life journey and how they're making an impact in the world. And so I was just curious about them. But because I always wanted to make a difference as my desire as a kid, one of the things that helped me is when other kids are next to me and they're starving and they're about to die, I would imagine myself still visualizing as one of those people who are going to come and help everybody. And then I'll ask myself a question: how can I practice to be that person right here? What's the thing I can do? So I'll ask myself that question. Then my mind will allow me to crack jokes to this kid. That joke may not work, but the next thing, okay, what can I do? So my mind tells me, okay, go there and just dig this plant and eat it. If it doesn't kill you, come and share it with the rest. So I'll go and I'll dig. There's a plants that I used to like eating. It's look like a big fat potato, and then it has a lot of water and it is sweet, but it gives you energy. And so, but I did not know there's another plant that looked like it, fatty with juicy, but when you eat it, it just makes you more thirsty. So one time I ended up eating that one. I thought they said I'm dead, but I ended up not dying. So luckily there was water, so I just drank a lot of water and then I was fine. Because it dries your throat. It takes away I don't know what that plant is called. But now when I was in Nairobi, I asked myself a question. Now I'm here. Emma died. I'm not in school. What can I do here as a practice to prepare me to be that person I want to be? Then an idea came like, why don't you go knock at people's houses and ask them if you could wash their car, clean their toilet, clear their compounds. And if they give you money, you tell them you want to put a next child soldier in school. And so that's how I started. We go and we get friends and we go to church, and then we got involved and we were able to put young people in school. And one day I was just on a Kenyan public transport, and I heard P. Diddy singing a song, Jesus My Best Friend.
P. Diddy, the
Puff Daddy then.
yeah, Puff Daddy,
And
the
that's okay.
artist.
A gangster singing about God. Okay, cool. So I went on and said, look, I wanna be a rapper. I went to a studio with a couple of my friends. It was so funny. The guy, the producer said, okay, come on. So like, 'cause those days you just saw it's yo, yo. You put the beat and we just say yo, yo, da. And he said, get the hell out of here. Get out. So he just kicked out of the studio. So like, you guys are not artists because none of us could even flow. I didn't know there's something called flow. So we go to the next studio. They tell you, take your money, get out. Like, you're not an artist. Like, it was so cold. Until we found, I found another producer who told me, hey, what you're doing is great. So he didn't kick out the studio. He said, what you guys is doing is called spoken word because you're not following the beat. You can talk as you can, as much as you can, no worry. But if you want to do what it's called hip hop, there's a way it is done. You got to listen to the beat. You just don't talk anywhere. That's what spoken artists do. I said, okay, which one do you want to be, a spoken word artist or this one? Okay, I said, I want to be this one. It's okay, then you have to go follow between the beat line. Doof, cha, doof, and you write along then. Okay, now go, that's your homework. So I went home and I listened to that and I copied a complete song of somebody else, but just change each lyric. Then he said, no, this song you've done, it's similar to this song, and he played the song. So that's the journey to become an artist where you don't know what it is. I think what helped me was persistence.
I want to use this occasion to bring Aita into the conversation. Aita, thank you for sitting patiently, but I wanted you to have a sense of Emmanuel's childhood. And now we hear him saying he found his purpose as a storyteller, which led him accidentally into becoming a musician. Here is a master storyteller. So I invite you now to jump in, and what's on your mind as you're listening to this story?
A million things, a million and one things. Actually, I was sitting here and I was hearing Canaan in my head. When I get older, I will be stronger. They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag. Right?
Amazing.
So the whole time that you're talking, I'm hearing him, and I'm hearing that poetry out of Somalia because you're from a region of great poets. So and I'm apologizing that I'm not spitting your lyrics, but I was conscious in a Canadian context where Canaan captured the world's attention, and luckily for him in that context, World Cup soccer took that sound, and that became the national sound when soccer went to South Africa.
Yeah.
So I am thinking that you have become that mighty flag, right, to wave in the world. And the other thing that I was thinking about, like, what do I know about the Sudan in addition to Emmanuel Jal coming to the People's Residence on Bathurst Street? And some years ago, the power went out in North America. And as a matter of fact, we were across the street at 746 Bathurst Street, and all these people were walking. It was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, maybe 3, and all these people are walking. And I'm thinking that they're going to a soccer match or a sports match. Like, where are all these people going? How come I'm not going with them? And my mother, who lived in Barbados at the time, phoned and said, so, what are you doing? And I go, well, I'm here working, but there are a lot of people walking today. And she said, don't you know the power is out? What? What power? The power in North America.
Across the province?
Right, across the province. Like, aren't you in darkness? No, it's kind of light, but there are a lot of people walking. Right? So I drop the phone and I run outside. And of course, the power is off. The whole city, we've got to get home. There's no power. So as I'm walking up the street, just as I pass Bathurst subway, there is a woman, another sister, and she's from the continent. And she says to me, my sister, where is there a phone booth? Like, phone booth? Like, girl, everybody's trying to get home. There's no power. But it was a beautiful moment, though.
Phone booth.
Right? We're a phone booth, right? So back then there were phone booths. I'm even dating this story. So I say to her, I think a phone booth is in the subway. But why would you need a phone booth now? And she says, my sister, I have to call my family back into Sudan. We have no power. You have no power. We are the same. So while you're sitting there telling that story, I'm thinking about the sister who showed us that we have all these differences in the world, but for a moment in history, we were just the same. No power. This is really good. So I was thinking that. And the other thing that I noted is that when you were speaking about your childhood, and I was sitting here thinking about whenever you shared that story, do you feel that you were real pressed in that moment? But what I noted too was an interesting thing that both Dawn and I did. We sat forward for a moment in the telling of the first aspect segment of your story. And I noted that act of humanity where you went back to a moment in your time, which is a moment where, you know, you'd want to erase that, you'd want to forget that, you'd want to not even to have had that moment. But in the telling of that, I was just curious for a moment, and I don't want to take you back there, but I noted that we both sat forward for a moment.
To connect
with you. But then we also saw your relationship with the world at the same time. And so we sat back to again give you your space to tell the story. So I'm going to ask you two things at the same time. Do you ever feel oppressed in that moment? That's one thing. And then I'm fascinated too with indigenous knowledge. And one of the first points that you made is that you had your traditional doctor who came and, you know, he was telling people, well, people were alive but they were dead. But then your indigenous knowledge of the young person who questioned the universe and who questioned the world. Why is all these things happening? And then the second friend who knew or sensed that you didn't have the ability to take the crow out, but he acted on your behalf or was your ambassador. So how do you really feel now today about indigenous knowledge and the power of that traditional indigenous knowledge?
I mean, one of the things is when we go into our roots to try to dig memories that could be disturbing, one thing I've come to learn is when we attach a lot of our emotions to the pain that happened for us in the past, what it actually does is it robs us the value of what those challenges brought to us. And so going into that present, how I'm able to survive is I look at my past as a teacher and my present to be like my mother and my father, and my future to be like the master, which is, in my mind, I'm just holding the vision. What is that? My vision is to share my experiences for social emotional learning, and that is to create conscious global awakening, either through the arts, businesses, philanthropy. So in terms of the questions, I think you've asked like 4 questions. I don't know if I'm going to get them all at once. In terms of the kid that shot the bird, I don't know. What I knew he was dead. He didn't even, to where I could look at him lying down there. How did he know there's a bird up? He was dead. To me, he was dead. But I'm struggling with my gun. He stood up and shot it. So he left so many questions. At the moment, he's my hero. He's not the only one. There was another child soldier who refused to stay with us and walked and walked. If that child soldier never came back, we'd all be dead. That child soldier now is a general in the army. But I've not taken time to actually tell his story. We were not really friends. But one thing is, when you are soldiers together, you have a responsibility, even if you don't like each other, that you have to always come back and rescue the rest. But this young child soldier who managed to survive and came back, and when he came back, he made sure that I am taken care of properly. And you know the way a lot of people die when you come to eat food for the first time. I was guarded. There was food, but I was just given little. I remember I was so not given enough food, and I was so angry with my own perception, thinking these adults are just eating and they're not giving me food. I was given milk with this, how do you call this? What this thing they use in Halloween? Pumpkin. Milk and pumpkin, soft little to drink so that my stomach is warm. But I wanted meat. I had to sell my bullets for God to give me a little piece of meat. And he told me, we can't give you more. If you're going to eat, you're going to die. And then next days, some people died. Those who ate, those adults who did not control themselves. And so if I look at that, these people saved my life. And if about the traditional way of life, that knowledge, I don't know. Now I'm going back to understanding the ancient knowledge and how it has a big impact. Even before the war, I remember when my mother was alive, an old man came. Not really old, I think probably, to my guess, now he'll probably be in his 40s. He had feathers on him, he had all kind of stuff, and he looks like a real witch doctor. And all he said is, I want you guys to make a sacrifice, because there's something big that is going to come, and it's going to change all our lives. We'll never be the same. But I just want to say, let's make a sacrifice. Then we allow him to talk. So he talk in different voices. He'll make fun and then he'll talk in different voices. Then my mother would listen, say, in Jesus' name, cussing him out. This house, we're Christian. We don't believe what you're saying. So, but and then some people say, like, let him speak. Allow him to speak. He spoke, and he warned people, and he's telling some people, this place is not going to be safe in time to come. Let's make sacrifice, and people should leave. And then I said, now later, couple of months later, that place was burned off. People died. We got separated with my mom. So it's like a prophet, our own prophet comes to tell us about something that could happen and warning people to listen. People didn't listen because we're like tied into our cross. We didn't want to listen to this. And so I don't know how to put it, but now I'm more in tune to also be more intuitive to and be open that God can speak to us in different ways.
Something you've said there prods me to leap forward to the present on this journey, because you took some indigenous knowledge about foods and fairly recently turned it into a health food product. Early on when you got to Canada, I remembered you were always worried about everybody else's bad health here. I was taking you around and trying to connect you with people, and you were immediately worried about them, including you sending one of your preparations down to me the first time you heard that I was sick in my condo. But that you used indigenous knowledge to produce a product that now gets sold in the health food stores. Is that not right?
I mean, it's amazing how you said, sometimes we don't know how valuable our life is, how lucky we are, or sometimes we just hold ourselves in. I remember people used to telling me about eating healthy, and I never want to listen to them. It's like telling somebody that guns should be stopped, or kids are not safe in school. Let's bring a law so that kids could be protected. and maybe that person's child died. The person on power may not listen, but when it is their child, that person could become an activist to want to stop every gun. For me at that time, I used to have high blood pressure. And when I go on a show, I'll have headaches. Sometimes I'll collapse in my hotel or collapse after I leave the show. And I ask myself, why am I like this? Well, this is city people disease that I'm having. Because in my village, what used to happen?
City people disease.
Yeah, because those days is the people who have high blood pressure or diabetes or people who are sick are always from the city. And when somebody is sick from the city, they bring them in the village. So they eat simple food, there's green stuff, there's cow milk. Then after that, a couple of months they're healthy. They go back to the city, couple of months they come back sick. And I said, okay, so the city disease are getting me now, here. Then I said, okay. And my mind started playing pictures. Okay, how can I eat traditional food here so that I don't get city disease?
I hear you're meaning when you're now in North America and Europe and
in Canada.
Yeah.
So it was in December where I made my mind that I'm gonna be eating village food. So I went and looked for a grain called sorghum.
Yeah. Used widely in Africa.
Used widely, and I would ferment it and I'll make porridge with it. And then I said, okay, what other stuff can I make? Can I be more inventive? Then I'll probably sometimes ferment sugar, and then I'll mix it to make it a little bit sweet. And then I'll mix them together and I'll bring in kale and I bring all other green stuff, bring in blueberry, and then I'll mix them up, then I'll drink. Then my high blood pressure kind of like left. Then I said, okay, what is in this thing? So I want to study what is in this. Then I stumbled on something called moringa. Then I said, okay. So I was passionate about food to learn. Then I came to realize, okay, what was the cause of my high blood pressure? I was told it is trauma. So now when you go, people tell, oh, because you have nightmares and dream and you're a child soldier and because this is inherited and all of this. So, but one smart doctor told me, I don't want to put you on pills because he doesn't want. So I'm going to tell you something. I don't want to put you on pills. You find alternative ways to solve it. You're too young to have this stuff. And then I went and did research and I found out my high blood pressure was because of calcium deficiency, vitamin K, D, E, magnesium, and potassium. And then I said, okay, so this is it. There is no sun here. The food that I'm eating have no minerals enough. So sorghum has got a lot of it. And then I said, good. And I started, that's how I ended becoming a food. Then I said, okay, how can I travel and carry same food with me? Because it was difficult. And that's when I created the superfood called Jalgua, which is now in different stores that I sell in Whole Foods.
So we're very happy for you to make a promotion for your health food, which is Gua Jal.
Jalgua.
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 And Gua is part of your newer language.
Yeah.
That means peace, does it?
Good, peace. It's a coded word. I could use power in Arabic.
Because I see you using it in your presentations and in your promotions, but in your health foods that people can find in Whole Foods and other places. So
I want to jump in here though on something that is fascinating me: city disease or city illness, and one of the things I'm curious about, and I saw this some years ago, and I'm going to go back to a point, and we were looking at young children in Ireland, and they were part of the IRA. And then we went to children in Mozambique. Then we went to maybe people in the Congo or the Sudan. But these were child soldiers, if you will. And they had a point of view or an opinion that they were involved in a political war, whether it's over land, whether it was religion, whether it was whatever. But then we came to a city, And the children that we saw as child soldiers were often located in rural areas in those countries, whether it was Ireland or Mozambique or wherever. But we came to a city called Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles now, we came to a new city disease, and it was called gangs. And they were child soldiers engaged in a war. A war that we are trying to understand. Is it a war of religion? Is it a war of cleansing? Is it a war of whatever? So my question is, and what I'm curious about is, when you came to North America and you encountered this city disease that we have, and even more so in Canada, and we see young people in conflict with each other. I don't subscribe to black on black violence because all races and nations have their own thing going on. So that's not where I'm going with that. But I'm just curious of how you perceive this city disease of young people who seemingly might have access to things, might be a more developed nation, but at the same time were acting as though they were in a war, and this war of young people. What was your take on that, coming from a place where you had maybe deeper understanding of what led to the war in the Sudan or in the Congo or whatever? But I'm just curious about the city disease of gang violence.
Wow. I mean, there's different ways I could approach it. One of the things I look at it, one of our biggest threat is poverty. But also there's the other one I look at it as, it's easy to recruit somebody who has nothing to do something wrong than somebody who has a lot. Most of the child soldiers come from poor families. If you look at the gangs, most of the little boys come from the poor neighborhood. And so I would say, if I was to go deep, I want to just go slightly deeply. I would say, especially black people in our continent, what I begin to see the comparison is we've been programmed to self-destruct. So somebody doesn't have to tell us to do anything. We have generational traumas. We have generational bitterness. And so, and a traumatized mind cannot see beyond a month, beyond a year, cannot think 30 years. It only acts on the moment. And so, and you look at it, we have so much wealth, but why are we begging? We have doctors with PhDs, but their mind can't seem to create, you know. And so you have people who become so famous and they acquire wealth, they go back into poverty. How is it that? And so I look at it as, even though we may have our leaders, we have leaders who have come on power, but they've inherited the same infrastructure that was built to oppress their own people. So we have this cycle that is going in like that. We're not going forward. We're just ramping each other. So in terms of Africa, we have not healed. A moment has not been taken for people to heal so we can program ourselves to move forward. We are still holding those programs that was put in place. And so, and if I come here in the United States, if you go to the black neighborhood, even though there is so much, but there's still generation trauma. There is still bitterness that has been passed on. And so when you look at it, the families cannot think 30 years. Everybody's on the moment. Who's raising the kids? It's almost like where we are. The father is in the battlefield. The kids are here. They become child soldiers. The mother, he's the same. The father probably was a gang person. He's in prison. And then it's almost, if you look at here in Africa, there's similarities. There is wars happening. And the children are the one fighting. Who are these children fighting? Who is making them kill each other? There's gangs, there's drugs involved, territories. So there's warlords is in the cities here, just like us where we have warlords back at home. So this could be another city disease, but the bottom line for everything is poverty. So the fear of not being able to have something is.
Are you a Big or are you a Tupac person? Which camp? where are you at with all of that?
I mean, for the moment, like, I like both because they both influenced me.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I had no idea where they're from. I used to think they're Kenyans. So it took me a while. Okay, American, Tupac. I couldn't get it. It took me years to understand that there are black people who live here. I used to think these are either Kenyan. I used to think Bob Marley was Ethiopian. So, because there are people who look like him. You know, Tupac looked like any person from East Africa. At that time, I didn't know Nigerians existed, so I only knew East Africa. That's it. Yeah, it took me a while, though. It took me a while. Tupac Shakur, yes. America, okay. Probably they're just putting America. These are just black people who are here. Yeah.
But I want to go back to some of that music because when I first started doing some learning in Kibera, the big slum, this beautiful young woman who grew up in Kibera was taking me around and helping me to understand the creativity that existed in that slum that allowed people to self-organize in order to survive. And then she wanted to know who I was and what did I know. And in that conversation, I mentioned that, I was getting to know this wonderful young man called Emmanuel Gel. Emmanuel Gel. Like, suddenly I was in a whole different category in her mind. She knew all your music, and she had me take her picture, and I sent it to Emmanuel years ago and said, here's one of your fans. But somehow you, with all of that funny story about getting kicked out of studios and learning that you can't just do the spoken word unless you want to be over here, but if you want to be a hip-hop artist, you got to go with the beat. You ended up creating a song and an album in Kenya that won awards and attracted some international artists like Peter Gabriel that gave you another step on your journey. Is that not right? I mean, tell us about how you got connected with people like Peter Gabriel and into some of those international festivals that he was becoming famous for.
Well, I mean, I got a song that became a hit in Kenya. Fast forwarded, I was able to do more music later on. Because one of the things that made it easier for me to do hip-hop was we have something called There in my village, which is kids will gather to teach their mothers and their sisters and their grandmothers,
Playing the dozens.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's it's an all over kids things. And it's almost like hip-hop. So for example, someone would say, there, yes, okay. Your mother is so ugly that if a lion comes, the lion will collapse. And then the other kids. So the idea is if you can make both teams laugh, then you win. Then other kid will chip in, your sister's breasts are so large that when she's milking the cow, she has to tie them on her neck. And sometimes, like, I used to go for those battles and I would lose, and sometimes I get angry and fight. Then the other kids say, no, this is not how we do it here. It's just you have to win with your mouth. So the kids had rules, like, and so they'll gather themselves, with nobody, no idol around, then you just diss each other. And so there's like some little heroes that other kids are scared about. So, and so those memories begin to play in my head. So, okay, this is similar to hip hop. So you just have to follow the line, because the way they diss each other, there's a rhythm to it. So you have to. There's points collected. So you wait, you pause. If you want to say yours part, you say they. Just like here, they'll say yo.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
they say they. If you say they,
Yes.
it's like you're telling the next person, yeah, I'm coming in. You say your lines, I'm coming now. But here they say yo, yeah. Then that's a sign that you're gonna get in. And so, and I began to, I learned quickly, and I was able to have a song that became a hit
In Kenya to start with.
in Kenya. And then that one, I got a record label, signed me. Then I was invited to perform at Live Aid with Peter Gabriel.
That was Peter Gabriel.
Yes.
So, okay.
Then Peter Gabriel took me on his stage. Just one show. I still wanted to go to school then, but when I performed at that show, I remember one time my legs were shaking. This big crowd, and my legs started shaking. And I just checked my leg, and the people thought it's a dance style. But my legs were like this, and they said, ah! And then everybody's going like this, and then, okay. And then I just went with it.
Yeah.
And that,
And I think of when we saw you in your recent lecture recently, when you went to the music,
yeah.
you had all the dancing and jumping. In fact, you had all the crowd, including members of your board,
nice.
dancing
Very
and
nice.
jumping with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that gave you a chance to get out of Kenya, and you and I met, although we've met in Kenya a number of times, we first met in New York when you came to do something with the group that was dealing with conflict in the UN. And can you just give us a sense of, like, what were the steps that brought you from a chance with Live Aid with Peter Gabriel, and then you're in New York, and then you're living in Toronto? How did that come together?
Well, I was at that moment I was used to be really active because my knowledge was limited in how I wanted to make change. So I used to think through UN, that's where there's a real solution. And so I would go there, try to meet as many people to tell them about what is happening, campaign, go to schools, and just continue. So as I began to broaden my knowledge, also traveling, one of the things that led me to come to Canada was my country, South Sudan, got independent, was separated. But when I went there, I was beaten.
Yes, I remember your first trip back, you got robbed by when you arrived there.
I was beaten by one of the security people who met me and said, look, we just want to tell you, we don't like activists here. I said, what are you talking about? I'm bringing a peace concert. That's nothing to do with you guys. This is to support you. We talk about peace and we mobilize young people to be peaceful. That's what we're doing. And so we just want to let you know we don't like activists. We remove their eyes and we put them in bags and throw them in the Nile. I said, okay. That was just a talk. The next day, when I was at night trying to go home, we were doing a big peace concert. I was beaten. I almost died. And then it became not a safe place to be after.
But how did you not get cynical about that? Because you're coming back thinking you're having your opportunity to do good, and you get beaten up, and yet you kept working to build that school in southern Sudan. Like,
the thing is, it all goes back to knowing your purpose. So, and they did that. And I said, good, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to come and stay here. I'm going to probably move to a country where I'm safe. I'll move back here when my value has dropped in terms of if they're to kill me, I have no value. I would have done everything I want to do. So I'll move back here when I've done my key point. That's why I said, I'm going to come out, manage to build a school to put kids in. Then I set it up. Canada took me in. So Canada allowed me to move in, and I'm settled here in Canada. I set up 3 companies, which is my record label, and then I have the food business, and then there's the wellness uh, business that I've started. And so, and I just say, okay, I'm going to be here. It takes 30 to 40 years for a refugee to settle mentally, because you're thinking about home all the time. You're thinking about how you want to help people back at home. So you're left in that cycle. That's why it's so difficult for people to traumatically heal, to heal from their traumas, because the events are still happening. You're engaged emotionally with different incidents. And if somebody calls you, it reminds you of you at one time giving a call to be rescued. I get different phone calls. Somebody calling from Uganda. Next thing is I'm in Egypt. And the next thing I'm in Congo. They go in strange places. Okay, I'm in Malaysia. How did you get to Malaysia? So I just survived. I found a way to run away. And then you have to react. Then different people telling you there's news. And so, and Canada, I think, has helped me cope slightly in the best way possible. Yeah.
What's the funniest thing that you've encountered in Canada? What was that thing that just made you laugh and explode, that you thought, oh my gosh, this just tickles my belly button? What's that thing?
I would say like a tickle. One thing I'll just want to share is one thing that stick in my head. There's a young lady, her name is called Carrie, and she met me one time in a concert, and she said, look, I want to come and support what you're doing. I said, what do you mean you want to support? I said, I just want to support. I feel my heart want me to support. I said, okay. Strange, like in many places, no people are persistent. I wasn't open to it, but she kept on persisting. And so, okay, I'm starting a record label. You can come and help with events and promote. Then she worked for 6 months for free. She doesn't want to get paid. She travel, she find her way, she come and do, she promote and did everything. Then I have my record label manager, and we said, okay, why don't we give her a job and pay her? And so we went and proposed for how we're gonna pay her. And she said she cannot be paid. It's her part, she's contributing. As long as she's working here, she's making an impact in a big way. And I said, okay. Then I asked my manager, is this a Canadian thing? Yeah, it's a Canadian thing, but she has done it too much. And then we gave her another month, and then we asked her a question, why are you not interested in doing this? And she's saying, like, this is, at the moment my heart is still in it. I know when Emmanuel is out there doing his thing and crowders come, I am making an impact too. So I like to make impact behind the scene. Then she didn't want to get paid. So I went and asked her privately, and I asked her, hey, why are you doing it for free? And she said, to be honest, I'm doing it for Jesus. And then I reported to the label manager. And I said, okay, she said she's doing it for Jesus too. Then the lady must say, what the hell has this young person done to Jesus to do this for long? But the thing is, what surprised me is I came to hear Canadians love to volunteer. They like to be part of something, and that's something that stuck in my head. Those several other people who still, they want to do things. And without these little angels of people who want to give you time, we live in a time where everything is about money. But for me to come here to find people who buy an idea, who buy a vision and give you their energy, it's what I find beautiful. I don't know if it's funny, but I just want to leave something.
Well, you have a very special capacity, though, for bringing out that in others. And before we stop this wonderful journey, I wonder if you could take us into another very specific part of life in Toronto that you gave me an opportunity to see. You've gone on to do, I think it's 5 or 6 albums with the music that you've been producing. But you invited me to come and meet you on a busy Saturday afternoon along Queen Street somewhere And when I got to the door, I thought, gee, this can't be the place, and went up these stairs. And when you went through the door up top, here was all this machinery, and you were doing, I think it was, what was it called? See Me Mama?
Yeah.
Is that, and you were connected to musicians in 3 other cities
Oh, okay.
and doing your input here in Toronto with a wonderful guy at the controls. And I thought, wow, this is how young people make music today. It was a great experience for me, but that was a slice of Toronto life that you had jumped into very quickly, and I'm assuming is part of your good memories about this city.
Yeah, and I'm now Canadian. I love it. Now, it's it's hard for me to. My mind have never settled for a long time, but now I'm settling because
You feel at home here in Toronto?
I'm
No, on Bathurst Street,
On Bathurst
in the
Street.
People's Residence. M5S, 0B7.
Well,
Did you hear? Have you been on Bathurst before? Did you travel on the street before? And you thought, you know what? I need to be on that street. You
Yeah.
know, like I think I'm missing something on that street.
I mean, this place, it brings something unique into this street. There's something amazing about it. Came here that time, and I had that home
Nice.
kind of like feeling.
Nice.
Yeah.
so you have a sense of what's happening in this environment, and you added so much tonight, Manuel, and I
Yes.
thank you so much for taking the time, because
Yes.
to take us from life in a small village in Sudan, life as a child soldier, to now your life as you approach 40, where you become not
36
just
plus 4.
yeah.
36
I'm gonna
plus 4.
borrow that.
And 36 plus 4. You put it right on the cake,
36
right? You
plus
gotta
4.
you gotta know your
36
math.
plus 4.
Yes. Yeah.
But now you've been functioning as not just a hip hop artist,
Yeah.
an actor who's been in movies, a philanthropist, a health entrepreneur, and now you're capping that off with these wonderful life coaching lectures and workshops using your theme that my life is an art. So it's been a great pleasure for us to welcome you to the People's
Yeah.
Residence.
I did of that. And also I want to say that in the space, we pride ourselves that history may be contained in books or in images or artifacts around the space, but on a good day, at any given time, a game changer, someone who has walked big steps in history, you may find here. So I'm particularly pleased that when we talk about all the great things or great people who make up this neighborhood or have made up this neighborhood, that we can now add your name to the list
Oh,
and
that's
your spirit to the conversation. And when we talk about the continent, whether it's north, south, east, or west, we are not talking about something that is unfamiliar, but we could also say that the familiar spirit of Emmanuel Jal was here and is here. So
Thank
that
you.
excites us, and it excites me too, that we can also say that the spirit is at 7, 7, 7. Right? Are
Yeah.
you feeling that? You're
Yeah.
feeling that, right?
777.
Bathurst Street. Yeah.
Bathurst Street.
Yeah.
I have one question because I hope I should have asked it off the set, but since you're a great storyteller, what is the 2 key things a storyteller has to put in mind?
The ability to look at your audience and to be skilled enough to redirect or to give the message in a way that the drum, the heart on their bodies will receive. As a storyteller, you have an idea of the stories that you want to tell, but you can't come scripted with that story, because when you encounter the audience, the eardrum and the heart, the other drum, are connecting with each other. So in that moment when you see your audience, you must be able to read that audience and to know this is the message of the day. That's what I've learned in my craft as a storyteller. And to know that we are the story. We become the story. It is not the teller and the story, but it is now the story being told to the audience. And if there is any place, and it's like hip hop, call and response, that the audience can be engaged in the telling of the story, whether they're going to dance in the story or respond or any of that kind of good stuff, you're good to go. That's another genius about the hip hop movement. You know, say yo, everybody scream, right? Right? You get a chance to participate.
Hey, listening to that wonderful answer, I'm thinking of us at your presentation a few weeks back. He was practicing that beautifully. You had people participating from the audience. You had people connecting in the audience. You were not the sage on stage. You were engaged with the audience.
You are the
and
story.
they stayed, and they were all ages. And when you invited them to dance at the end, you saw what happened. So thank you for bringing that spirit here, and it's time to say good night from the people's residence.
And thank you for being an interviewee who asked the interviewers a question. That's a first.
So that's it for tonight. Please join us.
I'm just curious.
It's
on
wonderful.
our next event. These two are going to keep
It
going
makes
at
it different.
long after we turn off the